Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Vocational Education and Training session, user group for October. It's really good to see so many people attending this late in the year. And as I mentioned before, the reason why we're attending this having this meeting at this particular time is because of its proximity to VELG, which is happening next week. My name's Adam. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager for Canvas. And with Marita, Paul, and Kerry, we'll be running through the user group session today with the help of Ruth Thornton, who will be taking our first session, which will be focusing on APAC, Instructure APAC product discussion, mostly focused around the vocational education and training sector. We'll then be having a second session, approximately halfway through the event. We'll be talking a little bit about AI assessment and how we can build a more personalized experience inside Canvas. So we have started a little bit later today to just let people get in, but I will happily pass the microphone over to Ruth to get it sorted. And yeah, I'll leave the microphone to you, Ruth.
Thanks, Adam. Just a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. Yep. Okay. I do apologize first and foremost before we jump into it. My little, how old is he now? 18-month-old I've just had to take him to the emergency department. So I'm currently taking the meeting from my car. So I do apologize, but I think most of you have seen my face enough that you don't need to be reminded of what I look like. But really excited to be able to join you today to share a little bit about what's happened in product and what's coming, and a couple of the things that I think have been really significant in the vet space. It's no secret that I've got a huge soft spot for the vet space, having come from the vet education space. So it's really exciting for me to see our product evolve and shape and really start addressing some of the key problems that we see in this sector. So really excited to be here. Thank you very much. And for those of you who haven't met me before, my role is the Senior Global Product Manager for our region here in Asia Pacific. And essentially I work with customers on the ground here, as well as our teams directly, to really understand what's happening for our customers and where our product is meeting needs, but also some of the gaps we have and where we need to be putting our prioritization into solving those things for different users all around the world, and really providing that voice from our region and advocating for your needs. So if you haven't met with me before, I'd love to be able to meet with your institution and learn more about your needs and what's going on, and how we can continue to solve problems through the product for you and your users. But let's go ahead and dive in. Please do feel free to pop any questions in the chat, and we'll try to address those as much as possible. I can't really look at that while I'm presenting, so Adam or someone on the panel, if you guys can just raise those as they come through. But we'll go ahead and get started. And I wanted to kick off with, I should have saved this one till the end, shouldn't I? This is releases that have happened so far this year that I think are really relevant to vet, and none more so than Build on Last Attempt, or BOLA as we refer to it internally. Even all the Americans now say BOLA, like BOLA. This is so exciting. We've got BOLA in there now. So it's great to kind of get that feedback and get the buy-in from everybody around the world about just how critical this concept is, being able to allow students to really just focus on the concepts that they're not yet competent in, not have to redo a whole attempt in their quiz, but to remove that requirement to have to recomplete those areas where their competency has already been demonstrated, and really allow them to just focus on the question or multiple questions that maybe they needed to reattempt or
Sorry, Ruth.
In that task. And this
Ruth.
really has been something that has been, this request was born from our,
what I might do is I might share the presentation, because when you share it goes a bit scratchy. So let me share that screen. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Sorry about that.
That's all right. No stress at all. I've just got to find the right Chrome screen I had open. That's the one. Can everyone see my screen there? Okay. Go, Ruth.
All right, no worries. Sorry about that, everybody. Can you hear me now?
It's okay.
Okay. well, really, as I was sort of saying, this is born from our region and born from this sector, and it's been really exciting to see this released into the product just last month in September. And so hopefully, if you haven't already, jump in and have a look and start testing this out. We'd love any and all feedback that you've got. And this really is something that we'd love to continue to evolve and work with our users to make sure it's meeting that need. But very excited for this to be available in the product as of today. Just a reminder that this is only available through new quizzes. This is not something that is supported in classic quizzes. So you do need to make that switch to new quizzes in order to leverage this functionality. All right. We'll jump to the next slide, Adam. And this is for course pacing. And so there may be a number of you on the call who have heard of course pacing. But ultimately, if you haven't, the revised version is that this is a tool within a course that enables course designers or teachers to be able to define a set pace that students have to complete tasks or artifacts throughout that course. So really, it's a way of, exactly as the title suggests, pacing out the elements or the modules or the assignments happening in the course, and being able to do that elastically. And what I mean by that is being able to say, well, for this student or for this section of students who maybe started after the rest of this cohort starting, or as we typically see in a VET model, a rolling enrollment model where different people have different dates all the time, this is a tool that can help really take away a lot of the admin of that and provide a bit of a template, an elastic template for you to determine what that program sort of timeline or the scaffolding of that person's journey in the course looks like, that makes it completely personalized and specific to them, all within the one course. So you can have all these different paces for different groups of students or individuals within the course, all happening within the one course shell. So this is a really powerful tool. It used to only be available at the section level. And then earlier this year, we actually introduced the individual student capability as well. So you're now able to create course paces for a whole course, for sections of students, and also for individual students as well. So I'm not sure how many people have sort of jumped in and tried out course pacing. It is a feature flag you need to turn on to have a go. But this is a really powerful tool, and it is definitely something that I would recommend you jump in and have a look at if you haven't already. All right, we'll jump to the next one, Adam. And that's for restricting the view of quantitative data. And I'm really excited about this for lots of reasons. This is something that's highly desirable and applicable to all of our sectors. But something that we hear a lot from our vocational education users is that the grading and the marks and how these things are displayed to students really doesn't reflect what's important to them and how you want them to understand how they're going in a particular task or assignment group or at the course holistically. And what I mean by that is, if someone has attempted a task and they got 99.8%, it's really unhelpful for them to see not competent or not yet satisfactory 99.8%. That's kind of, soul crushing. And so what we really want to do is be able to take away the points in the percentage and just focus on the grading and that framework for grading that makes sense for vocational education. So being able to just leverage what you've already created if you're using grading schemes in Canvas, and just focusing on those letter grades of, not yet competent, not yet satisfactory. We know that grading looks a little bit different in VET, and it's important that the system reflects ways for you to be able to support that grading scheme for your institution. So the release of this feature, which happened in September, allows you to be able to do exactly that. Take away the points and the percentages from all the areas of Canvas where that proliferated previously, and allow students to just see the letter grade or the grading scheme values that you've applied. Now, behind the scenes for teachers and for admins, those percentages and points are still there, and that's important for lots of people's integrations and things like that, for them to know what the actual point or the percentage is at any given time. But the reflective letter grade of what those things are, that's the only thing that students are going to be able to see if you choose to enable this feature. So hopefully that's exciting for you, and something I know that when I was working in the vet space, we would have loved that. And I think this is something we continue to hear a lot from users, that it just doesn't feel like it really fits your needs for grading around what's shown to students. So excited for this to hopefully really elevate that for you. We'll jump to the next one, Adam. And this is, again, something that has great application across all sectors, but something that we see commonly in vocational education is that you might have specific trainers and assessors or experts coming in to assess particular assessments or particular modules within a course or things like that. And it can be quite overwhelming to have a look at the gradebook and see every student from every section or every module, every assignment, the scrolling across to the right, particularly when we have lots of knowledge checks and things like that, depending on how you've structured the content in your course or your qualification, can be really overwhelming to actually find what it is that you're looking for. So the introduction of gradebook filters in the gradebook in Canvas enables you to be able to create your own filters that you can come back to. You don't have to reapply them every time. Save your favorite filters and really just have a look through a much more targeted lens at the assignments or the information that you're really wanting to be focused on in the gradebook, and have only those things shown. So you might just want to see assignments from module 1 or from module 3, or you might only want to see particular assignments from assignment groups, or you might want to see things based on start and end dates of those tasks. So being able to add multiple layers to those filters is something that we've seen be really powerful and really, as I said, help people hone in on what it is they're really wanting to focus on and take away some of that cognitive overload that has existed in the gradebook up until now. Something we're looking at extending this capability is the ability to, for example, in this screenshot, you can see modules is selected as part of the filter. If someone wants to look at module 2, they can also add other aspects like assignment groups or statuses and things like that, but they can't currently pick multiple modules for that one filter. So that is something that we're looking to extend, the ability to multi-select within a filter so that you can have that be even more powerful and targeted at what you're looking for. But this was released back in August. And hopefully, if it's not something you've already looked at, I would definitely encourage you to jump in and have a look. This is not behind a feature flag. This is now core Canvas and the native experience for everyone. And I would definitely recommend that you jump in and have a look.
And further to that as well, there's also a, with the enhanced gradebook as well, with the options, you've got the ability to remove total and subtotal columns as well in the gradebook as well, which I've passed that on to quite a few people to help just clear up the nature of the gradebook as well. So that's another really good feature option that you can add, which basically removes the total column and the subtotal columns for, say, assignment groups or whatever that may be as well. But yeah, please continue, Ruth.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. We'll jump to the next one, Adam. There are a couple of the features that I wanted to call out that have been released in the last 6 months or so that I thought some of you might be aware of and already using, but some of you may have looked at but haven't really played around with, or some of you may have never heard of. So I wanted to share out those. But there's also 2 things upcoming that I really wanted to make mention of. And the first of which is the upcoming offline experience for students in the student app. And so this is really exciting. And again, something that was born out of our region here in APAC. We know that not everywhere around the world has the same access to resources, has the same internet connectivity at home. And there's lots of areas of our region here where this is absolutely top of mind and absolutely true. And we know lots of institutions struggle with this, to provide students with the capability to continue to engage in their learning, even when they are offline or they don't have reliable internet. And so what we've been working towards is a seamless and intuitive, secure offline mode that allows learners to continue to consume their content regardless of the resources that they have, as part of a really important equity piece to make sure that no one's left behind. And so what will happen for the student when they're looking at this is that you can see in the left-hand screenshot, this is sort of the settings page. So they're able to turn on this capability and they can update their sync frequency, whether that's happening on a daily or a weekly basis. And what that means is when they return to internet connectivity it syncs the content that they have downloaded. So that's the capability between being online and being offline. But what will happen is when a user is online and they're getting ready to maybe go home or be away for however long, be on the job site or something like that, whatever the situation is where they may not have good connectivity, they can go ahead, they can pick and choose the different content from their courses. It might just be a couple of modules they want to access offline. It might be whole courses. They can go ahead and select those things. They can sync them to their device and they can initiate those downloads in the material. And then when the user is offline, they can go ahead and access the app just like they would when they're online, and they can continue to review that learning material that they selected to be available when they were offline. When they then get back online, maybe that's the next day, maybe that's a week later, maybe that's whatever it looks like, they can go ahead and they can update that offline content, and they can choose to do that manually so that it's only changing or new content's being downloaded when they nominate to do that. Or they can have that happen automatically, as I said, on a daily or a weekly sync to see if there's any changes between what they've downloaded and the materials in the course. So there's a couple of things to note with this. This is in our first release. This is something that we look at in a phased approach. This is not by any means the end point. This is the first stage. In the first stage, in that MVP release, it will be for the student app only, and it will be for student users only. So this is not something that admins or teachers would be able to leverage initially, though we have heard lots of use cases for that. The other component is that this is, as I mentioned, focusing on content consumption only. So it's able to review materials, read pages of content, read discussions, read assignment information, but it's not participatory in nature. So they're not able to complete a quiz or submit an assignment or contribute to a discussion post in offline in this first phase. As I mentioned, students are able to manage this by themselves. So what it actually looks like in terms of whole courses or just aspects of a course that they want to be available offline, and they can set up that automatic content synchronization if they like. There will be support for images in pages and things like that. That will come through as part of the download, but third-party content, external apps, those sorts of things, that won't be supported in offline mobile initially. That is a much broader and more challenging engineering piece to be able to support engaging with those materials offline, because we are not the source files of those things, but that is certainly something that we're looking at addressing further down the track. And the last thing I wanted to mention here is that the next phase still requires quite a bit of research. So this phase we're looking to release in the end of this year. So maybe in the December release, but potentially in the January release next year, but very, very close to end of year start of next year. So hopefully that's really exciting for you. But we are already thinking about and researching what that next phase looks like, which we're looking at starting in the first half of next year, that research around what the next phase will look like. But the key things that we're looking to address in the second release of this is potentially offline grading from a teacher perspective, and also offline participation in things like quizzes and assessments. So that's where we're heading, but hopefully that gives you a strong sense of what you can expect in the first release coming just around the corner, really. And the last piece I wanted to mention, I'm sorry, Adam, I know I've already gone over time, but there's some really cool things coming out I think people should know about. The last piece I wanted to mention is selective module release or conditional release of content. And again, this is something we've heard as a use case from all of our different sectors here in APAC, but something I think that's really powerful for the vet space, particularly with rolling enrollments and with validation of content and things like that. The ability to seamlessly and easily manage whole modules of content and which students, whether that's a whole section or individual students, should have access to modules of content that are different to the rest of the course. So you might have everyone in the course doing modules 1, 2, 3, 4, and then module 5, you maybe only want people who've chosen a particular elective to have access to module 5 because it's only relevant to them. So you're able to go ahead and actually allocate that content to that group. Alternatively, if you are in a rolling enrollment model and you have groups of students coming through who are actually needing to look at a different version of content, so maybe a page of content has evolved or an assessment has changed based on validation or things like that, you don't need to make a whole new course, but you have just made a change to a few different artifacts, and any new students from X date should be seeing that. then that's another great use case where you can go ahead and actually allocate different modules of content or pages. You'll be able to do this even just at the page level. You can go ahead and assign that to the relevant people who should be seeing it. And most importantly, it means that students are only actually seeing content that's relevant to them, as opposed to some of the workarounds people have today around putting instructions in the header about who this is or isn't relevant to, or trying to manage this through allocation of assignments and announcements and things like that. Being able to go ahead and do that at the module level as well as at the page level. So we're very, very, very excited about this. It's going to make it far more flexible and robust for people creating and managing these courses to have some of these tools for that flexibility, and for students to really only see what it is that they need to see. And the way that it will work, you can see in the screenshot there, is it will leverage the same capability that assign to capability, like you already are familiar with at the assignment level in Canvas, where you'll essentially assign the module to a group of people or to individuals. So hopefully that's exciting for you. I'm just going to jump in and see if there's anything in the chat specifically. Yes, 25 questions. Yep. So I'll go ahead and I'll respond to those things.
I can throw them your way, Ruth. I've got them to put in the Q&A. So I've got the main ones coming in. Firstly, the other thing that's really handy about this is this gives a lot more flexibility for those people who are integrating with student management systems as well. Previously, we've suggested there's a way that you can leverage that. And that is a really, really, really good way to give more flexibility based on your integrations as well, and the way you want to offer content through that. So I know you're busy, Ruth, and I'll keep it really quick. So Jeremy has a question. Do you have any plans for when we can add a student to course pacing through the API?
That is a good question. It is something, the feature's still currently in feature preview state. So it is something that we are still in active development of. And we are still gathering feedback around needs and things like that. So it is something where the product team owning that space are reviewing that as a need and how important that is for people to be able to manage via the API. So I would definitely encourage you to provide some of that use case and commentary in that user group, in the feature preview user group in the community. But it's certainly something that I will feed back to the team.
Awesome. Fantastic. And Brianna's asked a question, but I think Jeremy's answered it in the chat around section start and end dates. There's obviously a way that we can bulk put those into Canvas via even sys imports and the API. So that obviously then can control the bulk start and end dates for that section. And those are the ones that the course pacing picks up by default. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, that's the way I thought about it. Now, we've got in here as well with the split module feature idea. Is the plan to have it available just for sections, or is there availability for other areas such as, say, assignment groups and things like that? Sorry, not assignment groups, student groups.
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a couple of reasons for why we're supporting sections and individual students first and foremost. The most important thing is that's how it works today. For things like that, you can allocate them to individual students or you can allocate them to sections. I can see my internet's unstable. I'm so sorry, everybody. I will respond in the chat because I don't know if you can hear me properly.
It's all right. We can hear you. We can hear you kind of okay. But I don't know where you're coming from for time, Ruth. You were bang on time, which is amazing.
Look, I try my best.
Oh no, you excel. That's what we love. For those of you who have this running joke, we call Ruth the ultimate believer. It's the ultimate professional. So once again, as always, Ruth, thank you so much for coming in and talking with the group today. I appreciate you doing it with such a with your little one in a little pain. I hope he's okay. He's okay.
All good. He'll be totally fine. Thanks so much for having me, and I'll continue responding to questions in the chat. And yeah, appreciate everyone's flexibility in with all the internet stuff. So sorry.
That's all right. No problems at all. We were having a Google this morning. It wouldn't be a vet user group without something like this happening. So we're happy that it's happened on our side for once. So we're easy. It's a little bit easier for us to manage it. So thank you again, Ruth. Appreciate your time. And yeah, we know that you're a vet person by heart. So it's always good having you come along to these sorts of things. So
for anyone who was at Campus Connect this year, we did have a bit of a breakfast club, fist in the air moment when we talked about Build on Last Attempt as like a collective vocational education group. I really felt I was, back with my roots. It was great.
Yeah, there was a lot of, let's just say, there's a lot of people like myself that have been here for a long period of time. I've heard that Build on Last Attempt or many iterations of it. And we were very excited for it to come out. So once again, thank you so much, Ruth. So if anyone has any questions or anything like that, please feel free to put it in the chat. Our CSM's online and we'll try our best to answer it. Next up, we've got a little problem. No, it's not a problem. I shouldn't say that. But the hype word of 2023, AI. Right? There is there's a few different definitions of what AI is. Yeah, sentient is also a great word that's been thrown around a lot lately. Just letting you know that doesn't exist. That's in the movies. But what we've noticed and what was brought up as part of our panel discussions here is that there is a bit of a confusion about what AI is, how it's going to affect us as students and teachers and trainers and assessors in this particular time. So we thought we'd have an open panel session. So as I mentioned before, Paul Pellier, Marita Bird, and Kerry Buttery will be speaking on this as well as part of from the industry side of things. And I've also asked Paul Miller to join us because he's had previous education experience along these sorts of lines and has got like a really good knowledge and understanding of Canvas as well. So if anything goes down that particular line, he'll be able to assist. But I suppose it's going to be a bit of a freewheel. So we've got some things that we'd like to discuss. And probably the first thing that we're going to kick off with is de-hyping or demystifying what AI is based on perceptions. And I suppose I'm going to probably start with Paul Pellier here. I've got to make sure I say two Pauls. So we've got two Pauls. This is just it doesn't normally happen. But I suppose from the industry, what has been the fears or the general vibe around AI, and what do you think is that perception? Do you think perceived correctly, or do you think there's things that have been missed along the way?
Thanks, Adam. There was initially a lot of the sky is falling kind of sentiment, and that was probably around this or Christmas last year when it really when GPT-3 was released and started hitting headlines. So everyone, all of our students are going to cheat, and we saw all of those policies being rolled out in higher education where it was just forbidden. But I think since then it's become a lot more positive as people start to see the power of it, and probably as educators start to use it to make their lives a bit easier as well. But I think the key thing really is around authenticity and assessment. And basically there's tons of people, RTOs and courses out there, and indeed ours included, where there are a lot of questions, written style questions or essay style question and answers that, and I think the biggest thing is where people get worried is when they're relying too heavily on those written responses to assess competence. So I think there's just a lot of it is being driven by this massive panic that, gee, suddenly we start to have to rewrite tons of assessments and do what maybe we should have been doing from day one, which was probably looking more at observations and observable skills rather than just asking questions about how things will be done. Because ChatGPT, as we know, is very good at answering questions like that. So I think it's getting a lot more positive. There's been a lot of warmth around it, I think, over the last probably 6 months. And I did a proof of concept last year, actually, so in January this year, of ChatGPT working in Canvas as a student content curation tool where they could use it to generate their own learning content, use a Socratic method to ask questions and get responses and save that as I guess their own curated learner guide. And that's generated a lot of attention on a video I created. And it's even actually sparked a research project over in the States. I got contacted by some researchers there who are doing some really cool stuff with that. So And I haven't, unfortunately, I haven't been able to progress that project any further in the last few months. But there's so many really exciting opportunities there. Probably someone like Kerry can speak more to that because she talks with RTOs a lot more than I do. So.
I was going to lead into that. Kerry, do you feel what Paul's mentioned there about the feeling around AI and what it is? Is it more that, oh no, it's a change piece, or is it more like that this has greater consequences on the integrity of the assessments that are being provided?
Both. It really depends on how much the people in each RTO understand what's going on with these large language models and different models that can create imagery and those sorts of things. So once you sort of understand a little bit around how they work, it demystifies it a little bit, because you realize, well, it's actually not coming up with totally brand new content. It's rehashing things by pulling on a massive database. It's conducting research and throwing new things together, but it's all existing information. So it's not like it's creating new and innovative things. And so that's where we need to be concentrating, I think, is authentic assessment for a start. Like Paul said, our observations, projects. How can we do projects that can make this real hands-on learning? And then also, how can we teach our students to use AI as a tool? So we've got ChatGPT, we've got Claude available in Australia now. Really excited because Claude actually has better results, less hallucinations than ChatGPT. And it was only yesterday or the day before that it became available to us in Australia. I've signed up and started using that. So it's about how we can teach our students to use it responsibly and ethically as a tool, because we're training students for the workplace. When they go to the workplace, they're going to have access to these things. So we need to be teaching them how to use them, how they need to be double checking the information, because as I mentioned before, hallucinations, information, ChatGPT makes stuff up. You can get an entire big rant about something that it's totally made up, that's not true. So we need to be teaching them how to fact check for bias of information, and use these tools in the workplace. And then look at how we assess to make sure that we're catering for that and not just relying on those short answer responses that are just subject specific, not related to the tasks that they're doing in their practical components. So that's where I'm coming from with that authentic assessment.
And I think you've raised a really good point. That firstly, it's coming out the internet, right? Because the internet's the voice of truth. So everything that's on the internet must be right. I mean, that's ultimately where those hallucinations are coming from, all right? We've got the extreme left, the extreme right, and somewhere in the middle, what's the statement? There's three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth, right? So, I mean, ultimately where it's coming from is going to dictate those particular answers. But one thing that I would like, and I would like Marita to come on here and talk about this, and Marita talked about this in a little bit of a off discussion that we had, is how are institutions approaching this officially, and how are they communicating that to students and teachers? Like, what is the guide or the principles that you're doing that? And I know, Marita, you've done something similar for people in TASDAE.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So basically we haven't created a policy around it. We've created guidelines. So this is what you need to know. So it's basically an inform yourself stance. So we've put those guidelines in, we've put in flowcharts. So those flowcharts tell students when it's safe and when it's not. And when they do work their way through the flowchart, when to check. So we've had a stronger focus on, critical thinking. And I mean, to be honest, it's given people the kick up the bottom that they really needed as far as some of their assessment tasks. It's like that, just because you can doesn't mean you should kind of space. So I was talking to a teacher the other day who's looking at the stimulus question. So because with the whole ChatGPT or AI or anything like that, the authenticity and the kind of fight that it has with sustainability at the same time, it can be really challenging. So if we have an assessment that sits around for long enough, students will always end up on course hero, or, it's just like phoning a friend, but this person always picks up. So I don't, it's not really different. So I think the teacher I was talking to the other day was talking about how using stimulus questions and a lot more media. So the questions themselves are absolutely static and stay the same, but the context and the media is what changes. And it was really, really quick for her to be able to record that media and change it up and do things. And ChatGPT can't watch it and interpret that. So for those people that still wanted to stick on those questions and things like that, that was really good. So I think we're seeing a more of a rise there. But our students are all informed. We're encouraging them to use it. Like Kerry said, if they go to the workplace, they need to be able to use it. They need to be able to pull up a manual. So, I mean, if you don't know something in the workplace, I'd much rather my apprentice check. So I really don't understand the difference. So what we need is for them to know how to use it and when to use it, rather than just cut it off because it's not good.
I love that analogy as well. It's like phoning a friend that always picks up. Okay, that's that I'm going to use that in future. So sorry if anyone gets any calls booked in with me in the next 2 weeks. But I think the really the bigger thing that we're discussing here, this is a really big change piece, right? And it eventually, in 2 years' time, this will be the norm. I suppose what a lot of people do is they want to do a lot of things where we can kind of set and we can kind of leave it for a period of time. And I understand we all run businesses, you know, where there's certain elements of our role. It's not just building these sorts of things. But yeah, like I use the analogy, we've asked the same question, like in schools, you know, can you write me an assignment on Shakespeare for how many thousands of years? Like what I'm saying is that eventually change was inevitable. This probably sprung it on a lot of people because it's real technology, was the ability to turn information into a legible paragraph, which is how we assess on that. So, I mean, what I'd probably like to get into, and this is where we can get a little bit more in the depth of the weeds as well, is like one of the easiest ways that I've been talking, and other CSMs I know I've been talking, this is where I'll bring Paul in to discuss probably different assessment types, is we've got the ability to really change the question, the way we're asking the question. We're not changing the question, we're just changing the way we ask it. So I was wondering, Paul, I might get you to come in here. I mean, we had a brief talk about what authentic assessment is and the strengths that vocational education has already in that market. But I suppose from your point of view, you're a CSM like myself, what sort of questions have you been asked around this, and what some of the strategies you've suggested to our clients around this particular, their concerns around this particular update?
Well, I just want to reiterate what everyone said already as well. You know, it's not something to be scared of per se. It's actually a tool that we can use for assessment. So it's this is kind of cliche at this point, but people were up in arms when the calculator came out because they thought that was cheating in maths. And now, you know, it's not. We all rely on calculators to do what we need to do in our jobs. So if you have that perspective, then that kind of lends itself to the type of assessments you want to be able to do using AI. But, you know, as you said, Adam, vocational education is almost blessed in a way because we do a lot of authentic assessment with observation already, which is very difficult to use AI to use to cheat. But you know, you can use direct observation, but you can also use the way that you structure your assessments so that it isn't just a verbatim spit out of an answer that is something standard that you can find anywhere on the internet. So we might need to think about how we're structuring things, particularly, you know, we've talked about quizzes earlier. We could use AI to help us build our quizzes and ask questions to save us time. So as a teacher, that can be a handy tool, but also as a student, maybe we think about, I like the example that was given earlier about how you change the media that's there. So, you know, it's not the same standard answer every single time. The question might be the same, but, you know, the way that you answer it, the situation that you're given can be different. But I don't think there's any one single answer towards this, except to say that if you're thinking about assessment and authentic assessment and the way that you're trying to gauge those skills that you have, that we just try and avoid those questions where it's going to lead to a path of just what you could have done previously anyway, which is, look up Wikipedia or look up something where you're not really testing their full understanding. So whether that's creating projects that they're involved in, having that more authentic assessment is putting them in situations where they're actually going to use that in the workforce, which is what we should be doing in vocational education anyway. So to me, it's not as scary as what it sounds at first blush.
Yeah, Paul, Marita, Kerry, does anybody have any further comment on that particular statement?
I'll just jump in and say that, yeah, we've been doing heaps of work on using AI tools for, like Paul said, creating questions and those sorts of things. And I've got a bit of analogy when I talk about the different tools that are available. So we've got ChatGPT, and GPT is GPT-3 is the language model that's the engine under the hood, so to speak. And if we're using it in ChatGPT, it's like we're using it in a go-kart because it's very generic. You've got to put a lot of information into your prompt to get what it is that you want and get a good result. So if you were just to ask it to create multiple choice questions, it'll give you multiple choice questions, but they're not necessarily going to be great. Then if we jump into some of the other tools where it's sort of incorporated, then, we might be upgrading to a Camry and it's got a few extra features and bells and whistles. Or then you can go into a tool that is specific around what it is that you're trying to achieve. So there's tools out there for education. So like Teacher-Matic, Magic AI, there's a whole lot of tools that are based for creating educational resources. And those companies in the background have put in a lot of work into their engineering and prompting so that you can come in and say, I want to create multiple choice questions or, whatever it is that you want to create. And it creates it much, much better. So it's like putting that same language model into a Lamborghini. You get a really good result, even though you're not as good a driver as someone who might be able to get that result out of a go-kart. It does all the hard work for you. So don't be limited to ChatGPT. Have a look at some of the other fit for purpose tools that are out there that uses that. There's lots of tools that have got free plans, just you're more limited into how many things you can do a day usually, but still great resources that can help you as a trainer.
I think that's an interesting thing. Feels like ChatGPT is kind of what Dyson is to vacuum cleaners. It's kind of like one brand that represents a much larger market segment of things than we do. Coming back to Canvas a little bit, one thing that I've spoken to a few clients about is those who have updated to new quizzes. You obviously get billed on last attempt, happy days. But the other thing that you're able to do as well is something that we're probably going to talk a bit more about next year is leveraging off outcomes. Now, outcomes can be measured per quiz question in new quizzes, as well as put into assignments through rubrics and grading and those sorts of things. But if you ask the same question over and over and over again, but different ways, but link it to that one outcome, you can use that to progress to see how that person's going in Canvas using the Learning Mastery Gradebook. So in other words, you could ask a question kind of one way here, reiterated another way here. And what that progress should show is that this is a consistent understanding of what that actually is. Now, that requires a little bit more work. It's a little bit more consistent, but someone was like, hey, how do I identify how people are going against this? Could this be used to identify cheating? Possibly, but it could also identify how people are actually understanding the concept as well, which is a really, really, really great way. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone here. The really cool thing as well, if you set these outcomes up at the root account level, and that goes throughout your Canvas instance, you're comparing with apples for apples across your entire instance. And that just gives you more and more information that you can use to make better informed decisions about how people are actually engaging with your content and are they understanding the concepts that you're trying to teach them, right? So that's one thing that, it's a little bit of work. I'm not going to say you can just turn it on straight yet. I know Ruth is pushing to, Ruth, what are you pushing for to get into Canvas? All the vocational education standards or something like that?
I'm now trying to eat some food, so you put me on the spot. Mid
Perfect timing.
Yeah, look, I don't know if anyone's ever seen outcomes in Canvas. I think they're incredibly powerful if they're leveraged in the right way. At the moment, there's quite a bit of administration around that, and it's not as easy as it could be. So there's workflows that we're addressing there. But my ideal scenario is that, and this is, Ruth's crystal ball. My ideal scenario is that the key outcomes aligned to the performance criteria and, all the things that are required for different units, that is actually centrally available in Canvas for you to be able to map your assignments and things to and assess through the rubrics and that sort of stuff, or tag content or tag assessments with those requirements as reflected in the requirements for any qualification. So that's my big ambitious goal. Wouldn't that be brilliant?
Look, it took us 5 years to get built in last attempt. I'm pretty sure we can get this quicker than that.
The point is that we it's not that it's not possible. It's just it would obviously be a really, really, really significant lift to do that and to maintain it. So there's quite a bit of effort on our end to have a look at that. But it's something we're exploring. So absolutely no promises or timelines, but it is something that, that's the type of thing I'm thinking about when we think about the future of Canvas for VET.
Sorry, and please go back to your enjoyable lunch. And I do apologize.
No, I finished now. Thanks for that, Adam. That's great.
That's really great. That's really great. And also as well, to come back to the product a little bit, I know build and last attempt is a catalyst and we go on and on about it, and because it was so warranted. But as part of a lot of people's change is they're changing from what was classic quizzes to new quizzes. Now, a lot of that at the moment is that, we are further working on the migration tools to make that even easier in the future. At the moment, it's very one-to-one. But the thing about one-to-one is that if you ask a multiple choice question in classic quizzes and migrate that to new quizzes, it's still a multiple choice question. Okay. So in other words, it's thinking about, okay, is there another way to ask this question? And there are so many different options or ways to ask that question. So for those people, I know, Marita, you just recently went through it. When you were looking at redesigning those quiz questions, when you were moving to new quizzes, did you consider, or maybe not this iteration, but later iterations about what that looks like? Like, what does assessment look like? Or have you kind of let your teachers go, hey, this is the options that are available. You've kind of reimagined what you thought possible.
We're kind of going through a bit of a phase anyway. So right when we released, we kind of started encouraging new quizzes, was the time that we started talking about assessment design in a little bit more detail, or pushing it a little bit harder, I guess, is one of the better words. So those two things were happening concurrently. So I don't know what I can't tell you is whether it's using new quizzes or whether it's the fact that people are thinking a little bit harder about how they're undertaking assessment, but we're seeing a definite improvement. So one or the other, I can't tell you which one, but we're certainly seeing a lot more. I think also too, because it's, a lot of people were kind of just holding on to their old classic quizzes and things like that until such times, because we kept telling them about new quizzes and it's coming, and then you can do your build on last attempt, and and so everybody kind of just sat in a holding pattern for a little while until such times as we started looking at that. So I think we had a lot of big things happen all at a similar time, and I can't put my finger on it, but whatever it was, it's certainly on the improve.
Yeah, correct. And that's one thing, a lot of people, like, this is a change piece. Okay. And this is like, we need to accept that that's what it is, but taking the opportunity that if you are moving to new quizzes, rethink that structure, build them in item banks as well. So other people can leverage off that as well. And sharing that content through your instance is something that's is really cool. Paul, have you seen, I mean, we delve a little bit more into new quizzes at the moment. Have you seen, we can start by asking, what's your new favorite quiz question type, if you want to answer that question to start off. But what have you seen any really good ways that people have gone and basically done this change or changed the way that they do assessment in Canvas based on AI?
We've got assuming this was for Paul Pellier, Not the other Paul.
It's open to both Pauls, right?
Okay,
I'm
sorry.
gone. I'm 50 minutes in. I've literally tried my best.
Sorry, Paul Miller, if I've jumped in over the top. We've got a little RTO group that we connect in with a few other providers, and we talked about this stuff recently, and we've actually it was something we did years ago. We used to do a lot more interviews as well, as a way of validating understanding and just finding key or really critical aspects of the units that, where there might be some written questioning around that, actually coming back in and doing phone or Zoom-based interviews, which can really just help validate what you're seeing in the quizzes. I know it's not a direct answer to your question. You're probably looking at more technical uses. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I really answered your question very well, Adam, but that's my shot.
No, that's fine. But now other Paul. Paul. Our Paul.
I think it's still early days. I have seen people looking at, I know that product are really keen on being able to get to a point where we can have quizzes, auto generate questions, and even feedback and things like that would be awesome. But yeah, I put this in the chat earlier. You've got to be mindful. It's not something that is just easy to do really well because of the limitations of AI. It's getting better and better, but those limitations can mean you can have some incorrect information happening if you're not careful. So at the moment, you've got to be, if you're using those tools, they can really speed things up, but you do need a spot check to make sure everything's right. I think that's probably something that everyone needs to keep in mind once you start to dive in.
Awesome. So if anyone in the chat like to, we're approaching the end. I'm being mindful that it is a Friday and it is an afternoon. Especially thank you to team that's in New Zealand as well. I know it's quite late in the afternoon. But yeah, if there's any other suggestions or things that you'd like to talk on this, remember you can chat with us on the Zoom. Also, a really cool thing is that this particular recording will be put up on the Canvas community. And we actually have a comment functioning under that. So you can continue the conversation well after this. And I'll try and put some notes from this session and everything as well. But to close off today, I'm just going to share something that is a little bit of how Canvas or Instructure is looking at AI guiding principles. And that is focusing on the fact that we believe AI to us is not merely, we're not here to replace anyone. It's working with AI to help assessors, trainers, administrators with those tools that are repetitive, those tools that are time draining, those things that we can help you become more efficient at. So you may have noticed that we have got a AI marketplace that we are developing with partners. But to become a partner, to become that sort of official partner, these are the three things that they need to have to look at. So there are intentional, safe, and equitable. That's the way we want to be working with these partners. We understand at the moment, AI on the internet is the Wild West. Anyone who's anyone is throwing out AI because it's the buzzword to be thrown in. It's good for your SEO searches. It's good to pay people to it. Paul's personal brand on YouTube is going through the roof. AI is a great thing to throw out for a little bit of attention. But from us, from a product perspective, these are the guiding principles that we're going to have that's going to run with our partners that we are going to put into that. So I'm going to share some things after this that relate to the AI marketplace that you can do research on. All our stuff on AI, both Instructure.com and on the Canvas community, is all forward facing. We've been pretty pro what AI can do in education, but we're also going to be, what are the intentions of that AI and the people that are building it? Okay, that is the main thing that we want to be focusing with as well. As always, please feel free to book in some time with your CSMs if you want to talk about anything that we've had today in a little bit more detail. As I mentioned before, details of everyone of our panel, and we can continue the conversation on the Canvas community about this. I strongly encourage you to do that. Any other questions that are all relating to the vocational education and training sector, please feel free to put it on the blog. That's what it's there for. Not really the best job posting place. Shout out to the person who tried to do that the other day. Sorry, I had to take that down. We're not a job board. I get why you did it. That's awesome. That's fine. But no. And the other thing that we will be doing, and this is something I've been trying to do with Ruth, but just for timing's sake, it hasn't worked, is we've got some really older plans that we did with dealing with rolling enrollments in Canvas and dealing with marking and observation reports and things like that. There's been a lot of changes that have happened in Canvas, which will streamline those processes. So Ruth, unfortunately, I'm going to have to book in some more time with you as well to discuss that in a little bit more detail, but we'll update those and release that on the community. But once again, I think this will probably be our last one for the year. You know, I think we can probably, let's just see how we go. The main thing is we've got a lot of work to be done with transitioning around. You know, people obviously have got built on last attempt. They really want to get that done, and then transferring to new quizzes is awesome. Also, shout out to all of those who are traveling to VELG next week. Safe travels. Enjoy. Paul will be there manning from a CX perspective. So please feel free to bring your best questions, and he'll be, yeah, literally chew Paul's ears off. He loves it. It'll be absolutely fantastic as well. But once again, for all those traveling, I hope it's a safe journey, and hope you all get together and meet in person. So that's everything for today. I'd like to thank Ruth for giving some time out of her busy day and probably mildly stressful day for us today, as well as Paul Miller, Paul Bellier, Kerry Buttery, and Marita Bird for your ongoing assistance with this. It's amazing to have you contribute to this group. So once again, everyone, have a great Friday, have a great weekend, and look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.